What should you do if you are targeted by a handsome male mermaid and chosen as your mating partner? He is Dessaro, a student majoring in marine biology. The object he studies is mermaids, also known by another name, mermaids. After many years of researching mermaids, he was finally able to find this species with the instructor for his graduation project. Currently, he is on a ship floating in instructor Rhine. Upon hearing the news, Dessaro immediately rushed out. At this time, at sea, a group of sailors was rushing to collect a net and pull up a fish, or a mermaid. The only species of mermaid that humans have found is the red-tailed mermaid in the Indian Ocean. This one is not like that, his tail is black. Under the reflection of the sea surface, the tail shines a cold blue color, the end is intertwined with a terrifying red color, like the middle of the sea, hunting for mermaids. At this moment, someone urgently pushed open the door and rushed in. "Little Wallace, come out quickly, we have found the mermaid." This name is Dessaro's long streak of blood on a sharp blade. This is the evil spirit of the night. Dessaro came closer and lifted the man's messy hair to reveal a handsome face. If he were not a mermaid but a human, with this face he could become the famous actor. Under the curiosity of a researcher, he touched his whole body, revealing his smooth skin and six-pack abs. More specifically, he was curious about the reproductive aspects of mermaids. While he was groping around, he was cut by a sharp barb. Blood flowed out and fell on the mermaid's tail, causing him to feel something and suddenly rushed towards him. Faced with the unexpected situation, the sailors quickly injected anesthetic and controlled the mermaid. Dessaro was also dragged back inside the train by the teacher. He pinned him against the wall. This position was a bit strange. He made a threatening face, telling him not to do random things. "If not, I won't forgive you. I thought you wanted to research the reproductive function of mermaids, so I warned you." Then he took action to molest him. Dessaro couldn't believe it, he was his teacher, yet he did this kind of thing. Luckily, he was able to respond in time. Temporarily avoid his clutches. In the middle of the night, Dessaro secretly went to the mermaid's place. He was locked in a transparent glass cage under the ship's compartment. Dessaro holds the light to search for the mermaid's location in the cage. It seemed that he was still under anesthesia, so he did not react. Just like that, outside the glass cage, he looked at this mermaid for a long time very carefully. Seems never bored. While he was engrossed, he discovered a wound on Mermaid's shoulder. He realized he was very weak and had been injected with anesthesia. No wonder he didn't move until now. He quickly ran to open the cage for his first aid. At this time, the mermaid also woke up, his sharp eyes showing an evil smile. It must be said that this scene is truly enchanting. Dessaro awakened. He was struggling to prepare to go down and treat the mermaid's wound when, with a bang, the mermaid rose to the surface, his eyes staring at him. Facing his beautiful face, he unconsciously exclaimed. Truly ferocious, his brain can only think of this word right now. This was the first time he experienced fear from the depths of his heart. His soul seemed to be trembling. The mermaid jumped out and rushed towards him, her long black tail curling around him. In a hurry, he held the tranquilizer gun and pointed it at him and asked, "What do you want to do?" The mermaid opened his mouth to speak sarcastically in a language he did not understand. He asked, "Are you communicating with me? Do you understand human language?" He thought to himself that it was possible that he was the first person in the world to talk directly to a mermaid. "You said I had no bad intentions. You're injured, I just want to help you." But the mermaid not only did not react to his words but also approached him. Expression like one hunting prey. Realizing the danger, Dessaro opened fire, and the anesthetic tube immediately entered the fishman's chest. Having been shot once, the fishman was a little angry, his expression gloomy. Seeing that the mermaid still didn't faint, Dessaro asked why the anesthetic hadn't worked yet. Hearing this sentence, the cunning fishman, who was not afraid to cooperate in acting, immediately fainted. Seeing that the mermaid had fainted, he quickly ran away, but because he was too hasty he slipped, so he jumped straight into the mermaid's arms in front of him. At this moment, the mermaid no longer pretended, immediately picked him up, hugged his waist and pulled him into his arms. Dark intentions were clearly visible on his handsome, lewd face. Dessaro pressed the tranquilizer gun close to the mermaid's face and raised his voice to warn. Look, I really don't want to hurt you, but unless you let me go first. Dessaro knew clearly that he wanted to win over this highly intelligent mermaid. Collaborate in research, you must make him realize that you are stronger than him. Even smarter than him. You need to conquer him first. The merman complied and relaxed the strength of his hand on Dessaro's back. Slowly lie down obediently and let Dessaro do whatever he wants. Dessaro carefully checked the merman's pulse. I breathed a sigh of relief in my heart. The anesthetic has worked. He rummaged through the medicine chest, took out a bottle of medicine, and sprinkled it on the wound on the fishman's shoulder. A mucous membrane forms on the mermaid's wound. It is this membrane that prevents blood loss, which is probably the mermaid's recovery ability. But I don't know why this wound hasn't healed completely yet. Recognize abnormalities. Dessaro used surgical instruments to tear the covering layer of mucous membrane. On the wound, it was discovered that there was a foreign object inside. A piece of a shark's tooth. Dessaro examined and learned that these were the teeth of an adult tiger shark. At first glance it looks broken. He suddenly looked at the mermaid's six-packed belly and thought to himself. Could it have been swallowed by him? Dessaro couldn't control his curiosity, reaching out to touch the shiny black fabric underneath the mermaid's lower body. But according to my skilled experience reading 365 series of stories about mermaids, this position is where the sexual organs of the mermaid race are located. Dessaro looked at the fish guy. The expression on his face right now. It's like seeing him as an innocent child who hasn't experienced life yet, unintentionally insulted him. Suddenly he reached out and grabbed Dessaro's arm. Warning bells rang fiercely in his head. He immediately took the anesthetic and applied it to the fish's forehead. Warning! Don't move! The merman raised his eyelids. Glance at the muzzle of the gun. It seems like you don't care. Just don't feel scared. Mouth curled into a smile. He pulled his hand and placed it on his firm, heaving stomach. Like your own rock that rubs. His eyes were full of anticipation. Dessaro asked, "Do you want me to touch you?" The fishman closed his eyes and obediently lay still. Seeing that, Dessaro also complied with the fishman's wishes. Gently and softly touched the curves of his body. His tail moved. It seems like I feel extremely comfortable. Just like a dolphin that feels happy and comfortable when being stroked. Suddenly the mermaid had a strange reaction. He curled his tail up and rubbed Dessaro's butt, making him jump as if he had been electrocuted. Dessaro felt something underneath poking him. Understand the problem. He shyly turned around and said, "What are you doing? I'm not female." The merman's arms wrapped around his waist and pulled him strongly towards him. His seductive eyes opened his mouth, constantly emitting sounds of unknown meaning. The mermaid's hot breath is right next to your hand. Dessaro even felt that desire had turned into an undercurrent, creeping into his collar. Under the urging of strange and enchanting sounds, continuously echoing in the ears from the mermaid's mouth. Dessaro, as if hypnotized, his breathing was rapid and hot, his whole body leaned helplessly against his body. The mermaid reached out and tore the shirt on his back. The claws were sharp but did not cause any harm to him. At the same time, the soft and wet force pressed against Dessaro's legs, spreading them apart. Dessaro at this time, his consciousness gradually lost, sinking into a daze, completely led by the mermaid's desire, without the slightest resistance. Suddenly, Dessaro's screams came from far away. That call got closer and closer, clearer and clearer, breaking the mental attack just now, causing Dessaro to wake up. But the whole person was still in a dazed state. The food was already reaching his mouth, but it was interrupted. The mermaid had a frown on his face. Annoyed, he clicked his tongue, escaped as quickly as lightning, jumped back into the water cage. Dessaro at this time, he also woke up from his coma. Reaching out and rubbing his head, he couldn't help but wonder. What happened? Why can't I remember anything? Dessaro looked at the still water in front of him. slowly review your memories. But it also turns out that Buddy came to collect mucus from the mermaid. But it seems to have failed. Suddenly there was a loud scream from far away. Dessaro, where are you? Dessaro realizes that Ryan is looking for him. Quickly close the medicine box and run away from the scene. Dessaro returned to his room. Hide all things under the bed. Then turn around and take a shower. He secretly thought that if Ryan asked, he would make an excuse to go take a shower and not hear. While bathing, Dessaro noticed the strange scent of a mermaid lingering. On my body, I couldn't wash it off after washing it. Moreover, it also made him feel dizzy. The whole body is hot, the body cannot control itself and produces a reaction. His whole body seemed to sink into the cool water of the ocean, sinking deeper and deeper. So deep that light cannot reach it. He slowly opened his eyes. Under the dim light of plankton on the ocean floor, a familiar silhouette appeared. Platinum-colored hair flowing in the water. Handsome face. But you saw it last night. Dessaro's whole body was swept away by his deep, sharp eyes like a predatory animal, yet gentle and seductive. The shiny black tail is slippery. Roll it up and wrap it between your legs. Under the gentle water. The two bodies were glued to each other. A low, seductive voice spoke in Agara's ear, Agara. What language is this string of sounds? What does this mean? It seemed like his whole body was possessed by delusion. He groaned softly. He quickly covered his mouth and cursed inwardly. I'm truly crazy. Yet I imagined myself and the mermaid doing it again. Dessaro finished showering, walked out of the bathroom, was getting dressed when the door opened wide. Ryan walked in and asked, "What are you doing?" After knowing that the professor had dark intentions towards him. Dessaro, always be wary of him. Realizing that there were only two people in the space, he evasively said, "It's too hot here, can we go outside and talk?" Unfortunately, he was one step faster than you. Reach out and close the door tightly. Even installed the latch. Dessaro startled and backed away. He forcefully grabbed his neck and pressed him against the wall. Low voice. What did I say last night? Dessaro looks like he doesn't understand. Respond loudly. I don't know what you are talking about. Ryan, he calmed down a bit. He laughed softly. Have you forgotten? So do you want me to use my actions to help you remember a little? I warned you. Don't arbitrarily approach dangerous creatures like mermaids like that, but who threw the fluorescent stick into the water tank? Dessaro knew he was negligent but still didn't let himself appear weak. He said it was probably something that fell while on the deck today. I swear I didn't go there. He still refused to let go, leaning close to your ear, his breath making you goosebumps. I won't trust your oath. All are a liar. Dessaro shouted loudly, don't do anything wrong, I'm your student. At Dessaro's warning, he said blatantly, I've endured it long enough, I've liked you since the day you chose me to be your teacher to guide you. If you follow me, I can make the Mermaid research project receive government support, and you will become a world-famous biologist, better than Wallace and Darwin. Don't you agree, Dessaro? I struggled, I refused, I would rather drop out of school, I don't want to be your student anymore, you shameless bastard. He turned Dessaro over and squeezed his face. Tell me to refuse? Dessaro, not giving up, shouted at him. Don't make me look down on you. At this moment, Dessaro felt a faint scent in the air. He realized this was the strange scent on the mermaid. Suddenly the lights in the room went out, and there was a loud aftershock upstairs. Accompanied by shaking, a hand with sharp black claws grabbed the professor's collar and pulled him out of his body. Pulled into the dark night. Dessaro, not understanding what was going on, he groped towards the door. Outside, the sound of sailors shouting loudly was heard. The storm is coming, the storm is coming. Dessaro ran out of the bathroom. Return to your own room. Dressed properly, silently scolding, Ryan is crazy, luckily I was able to escape. Suddenly outside the window, a dark shadow flashed past, interrupting Dessaro's thoughts, but when he turned to look back, he saw nothing. Dessaro sighed, maybe because he was too tired, then he fell onto the bed. His dreamy eyes gradually drooped, and he felt very tired. Tell yourself you need to rest. Just like that, I fell asleep. Until I felt the bone-chilling wind blowing through my body. Dessaro suddenly woke up. He jumped up and sat up. Seeing the window open. Outside the sky is overcast. Heavy rain. Lightning flashed. Dessaro was a bit surprised. It had only been half an hour, but the color of the sky had changed like that. He went to close the window, then suddenly saw a shadow appear on the window, and he just saw this image. Dessaro received immediately. He glanced behind him. The mermaid was standing behind him. Dessaro's face darkened. The mermaid is actually in my room. How did he get here? Having escaped, the mermaid pressed Dessaro's body close to him, hugging him, his strong chest muscles pressed wetly to Dessaro's back. A wet, webbed hand was placed on his mouth. The mermaid let out a low-pitched sound, slowly calling Dessaro's name. Dessaro surprised, how did he know to call my name, realizing this was not a problem? The problem now is to escape quickly. Dessaro ran as fast as the wind towards the window, jumped out. He used his fastest speed to run away, screaming as he ran. Hoped some people can hear. The mermaid also followed closely behind him, constantly calling his name. Dessaro silently cursed, damn it, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't escape him. Heavy rain makes the boat surface slippery. Dessaro slips, the whole person loses balance and falls backwards. Right when he thought he was about to experience intense pain from this fall. Then Dessaro felt his back hit something. Even though it was very solid, it didn't hurt him at all. Then his whole body was enveloped by a long black tail. Dessaro looked up at the mermaid in front of him. Think. I'm the one who got caught. The mermaid curled her tail and lifted Dessaro up. Slowly pressed his body close and gently placed a kiss on his chest. Dessaro was a little panicked and asked what he wanted to do. The mermaid opened her mouth wide to reveal sharp teeth. With some sharp fangs. He bent down and bit his shirt, tearing off a large piece. Dessaro looked at his naked body. I couldn't help but feel embarrassed and my face turned red. The mermaid squinted her eyes and scanned it, as if confirming that the prey's upper body was not damaged. He moved his hand to Dessaro's pants again and grabbed his belt. It seemed to also arouse interest in his lower body. Dessaro shouted in panic. Wait. Use the released hand to firmly press the back of the guy's hand back. The mermaid lowered her eyes and looked. His eyes stopped on Dessaro's hand as if something had attracted his attention. Only then did he realize. The mermaid is looking for your wound. He smelled fresh blood. Just like sharks. The mermaid caught Dessaro's hand and opened his mouth wide, preparing to grab it. Dessaro was scared by the actions of this mysterious creature in front of him. The whole body froze in place. Only a screaming sound remained in my head. Is he planning on eating me? No, I don't want to die like that. Just when he thought that in the next second he would have his fingers snapped off. The mermaid used her fangs to gently suck the tip of his finger. The tip of his tongue licked over the wound. Dessaro looked at the fishman in surprise. Suddenly I felt extremely doubtful. His heart was about to jump out of his throat as if it was being held by his claws. Floating without falling. Is he showing friendship? Use your own strange behavior to heal yourself. Is this the mermaid's revenge? The mermaid raised her eyebrows and lowered her head. Eyelids lifted again, staring intently at Dessaro. Eyes hidden under long moist eyelashes. Evil and possessive intentions cannot be hidden. The tip of the bright red lustful tongue gently slid through each finger. It's like you're intentionally playing around with your fingers. Dessaro withdrew his hand, stepped back, and spoke cautiously. That's enough, let me go. Suddenly he realized that the wound on his hand had actually healed. He was a little excited. The mermaid's saliva contained some kind of substance. Can quickly regenerate damaged cells. This is truly a biological miracle. He reached out and gently touched the mermaid's lips, exclaiming, "You are truly a wonderful creature." The mermaid opened her mouth slightly. The throat emitted a low vibration as if responding to Agara. Dessaro, rubbing the mermaid's face, repeated, "Agara. Do you have the right name? Agara, is that your name?" The mermaid neither denied nor admitted. Just staring at Dessaro, the corners of his mouth opened even wider. Like a little excited. "Move your lips." Agara tilted her head to bury it in Dessaro's palm. Just like a little cat enjoying being caressed by its owner. Suddenly Agara bent her waist and picked up Dessaro, her mouth emitting a low sound. "This time it's another one-liner," muttered Agara. One hand supported Dessaro's waist, the other maintained balance. Gliding across the deck like a snake, quickly moving towards the side of the ship. Dessaro realized that the mermaid wanted to take him into the sea, and quickly shouted, "No. Agara, don't do that." Right at the moment the mermaid approached the ship's wall, suddenly a gunshot rang out from afar. The bullet hit the ship's wall, rubbing sparks, and Agara instinctively stopped. Let go of Dessaro. Turning his body towards the direction of the sound, his eyes suddenly became extremely cold. From the darkness, old Professor Rhine appeared. In his hand, he also held a submachine gun that he found from somewhere, aimed at the mermaid. On his chest, there was a deep wound that was bleeding. Realizing he was intending to kill the mermaid, Dessaro screamed, "Rhine, calm down, just let the mermaid go and then shoot menacingly into the sea." Faced with a dangerous situation, Agara shields himself from Dessaro thanks to the fish's tail. The mermaid's entire body became tall. He bent his body, his hand reaching out sharp claws like a sword. "Take a stance ready to fight." Dessaro stepped forward, spread his arms wide, blocking Agara's body, shouting, "Rhine, don't shoot, go back. Return to the cabin." The professor still pointed his gun at the mermaid, saying, "Get away from Dessaro, this is a military operation." Dessaro was stunned, couldn't believe his ears. This trip is no longer simply about research but is also related to the country. "No, as a biologist I would never let you hurt him." As he spoke, Dessaro pushed Agara towards the side of the ship. "Let me jump into the sea and leave." Agara hugged Dessaro's waist tightly in shock. "Is this what you want to take me with you?" He thought to himself, instead of letting Rhine hurt him, why not go with him? He covered his mouth and took a deep breath, preparing to jump into the water with the mermaid. But before the escape plan could be implemented, a shot rang out. The bullet hit Dessaro's thigh. Agara was shocked and turned around to look at the person in her arms. Dessaro felt pain move to his thighs. Blood started to spread. What followed was a series of resounding gunshots. Attacking towards Agara, the bullet hit her shoulder. His arm. Intense blue-black liquid gushed out from the wound. Agara's arm also trembled a bit. The hand tightened tightly around Dessaro's clothes as if trying to catch him. Finally, he trembled and lost all strength and let go. Dessaro fell to the floor. The bullet wound caused him so much pain that he could not stand on his own. Dessaro turned around and shouted the name of the fishman, Agara. The fishman was now unconscious, his whole huge body falling to the floor. Dessaro anxiously rushed to his side, constantly shaking and calling his name. Agara's body continuously overflowed with blue liquid mixed with rainwater. No matter how powerful the creature is, still unable to resist human-made weapons. Humans are truly cruel, insane creatures. Agara lying in a pool of blue blood, her body curled up. The fishtail placed on Dessaro's shin trembled slightly. The mermaid was no longer able to resist. But the obnoxious professor still refused to let go. Still continuing to shoot continuously at his tail. Dessaro tried to endure the pain and move forward to block the merman with his body. "Protect him, scream, enough is enough. Don't shoot anymore." Dessaro worriedly examined the fishman's health. The mermaid raised her eyes and tried to support herself, looking at Dessaro. The dark pupils hidden behind weak hair narrowed. Looking at him deeply, still not moving. This kind of look was extremely unusual. It was neither terrified nor desperate, nor fierce from before, but seemed to want to engrave his current situation and appearance into his memory. Then slowly close your eyelids. Suddenly at this moment, Dessaro's eyes suddenly turned dark, his mind dizzy. Realizing the problem, he turned to question the professor, "What did he do to me?" Before losing consciousness, Dessaro heard what he said was just an anesthetic. "Sorry, if you don't do that, the mermaid will take you to the deep sea." Then his consciousness sank into endless darkness. When he opened his eyes again, he saw the disgusting face of the professor. He asked him, he was finally awake. "Is your body better yet?" From beginning to end he was fooling me. His identity. The real purpose of this survey trip was a trick from start to finish. Dessaro replied viciously, extremely darkly. He was extremely angry. "I wanted to punch this bastard to death, but my arm was held by something." Dessaro first discovered it. His 4 limbs were tied tightly like a mental patient. On the thigh was wrapped a bandage. The shirt was ripped open and loosely wrapped in 2 revealing rows of fabric. Dessaro lifts his eyelids. Look at him with eyes as sharp as knives. "Ryan, what are you doing?" He calmly sat down in the chair next to him. Laughing crookedly, "You won't think that this is what I did. Don't worry, this is a doctor's tie, because while you were in a coma, you struggled very hard. It's like someone forced you." Dessaro screamed, "Don't talk nonsense, the doctor did nothing wrong. Now you are like a delicious dish specially prepared for me," he said as he raised his restless hand and caressed it. Helpless Dessaro screamed, "Don't touch me," his hand slid over his penis. Rubbing made Dessaro suddenly jump, his heart cursed, damn it, he tried to struggle. Tried pulling the rope that tied his hands, but failed. He squeezed his chin, his eyes seemed to enjoy observing the expression on his face. "Say, don't you really want to know my true identity and the hidden purpose of this trip?" "I'll tell you when I have you." His hand slowly slid down. "Ryan wanted to untie your belt," Dessaro shouted in panic. "Stop, Agora. Agora." Suddenly he stopped. Yet he unconsciously asked for help from the mermaid. Ryan burst into laughter, but asked for help from that mermaid. That beast was now dying. Dessaro couldn't believe his ears. The mermaid was about to die. "Okay, let's continue with what we should do," Dessaro shouted. "Or not." Just as he was taking off Dessaro's pants, there was a loud banging on the door. A voice echoed from outside. "Professor Ryan, I heard someone screaming." "Is that you?" Dessaro, as he grabbed the straw that saved his life, hastily shouted, "Doctor, I need an emergency. I'm going to die." The doctor opened the door and walked in, asking how you were. Dessaro said, "I need help." While speaking, he suddenly froze. "Was it you?" "The outstanding genius Wallace of the Blue Maritime Academy. We meet again." This person, Davins, is Dessaro's senior and good friend. The professor standing in the back is bitter because the good thing was interrupted. "Senior Davins, why are you here? Where is this anyway?" Davins said as he untied Dessaro. "Are you confused? This is the Maritime Biological Research Base. This time he went to Ireland. Isn't that what you came here for? This time your actions are to receive orders and support from the government. Good job, I'm proud of you." Dessaro sat up, quietly thinking. "I didn't expect to be in a coma for so long, and I didn't even know when I got off the train. Moreover, this survey is clearly my graduation category. Since when does it have anything to do with the government? Who is Ryan anyway?" Dessaro was deep in thought when Davins mentioned mermaids. Dessaro excitedly rushed forward and asked, "Where is the mermaid? Is he about to die?" Davins was a bit surprised by Dessaro's reaction and said, "How could it be possible? The mermaids were living very well in the underground water storage. It's just that now he's extremely impatient and refuses to eat or drink. It's possible that Ryan's anesthetic bullets put him in a state of stress." Dessaro quickly said and led me to the underground water storage. "Right now I can interact with mermaids. Maybe try to calm him down." A moment later, Davins led Dessaro to the deep-sea experimental base in Ireland, while sitting in a transparent diamond-shaped elevator that slowly descended. Dessaro found himself a bit dizzy, almost wanting to immerse himself in this undersea world, feeling like his soul had sunk into a deep-sea crevice and massive slope. Surrounded by countless sea creatures. With many different types, it brings a flashy but no less mysterious beauty. The same terrifying oppression of the ocean floor. When two people got out of the elevator, Dessaro can't help but admire the grandeur of this research area. A neat hall appeared before my eyes. Around the wall, there are many tightly closed doors. The round shape is heavy but solid. It looks like a submarine entrance. It feels very advanced in science and technology. Davins pressed the fingerprint to open the door, the moment the door opened. A scent emanated from inside, making Dessaro a bit uncomfortable. Is it this strange scent again? He turned to Davins and asked if he felt the smell on the mermaid's body was a bit strange. Davins sniffed. What smell? The fishy taste of sea water? Dessaro say it smells good. Smell it, it's so strong, it smells a bit like musk. Davins laughed. If the fishy smell of seawater could be understood as a fragrant scent, then it would be very strong indeed. Dessaro muttering, his nose is deaf. Dessaro enter a semi-pipe path just like in an aquarium. The scenery is extremely wonderful. He couldn't help but exclaim. Wow! It's truly like a miracle. Dessaro was interested and asked Davins if he could let me stay here to do the survey. I really like this place. Davins nodded. Of course it's okay. Suddenly, Dessaro noticed a strange scene. There are a few dolphins gathering in the distance. Use force to kick your body. Stir up each small vortex. Dessaro pointed at Davins. What's going on there? Davins says this is an interesting phenomenon. You follow me. Davins led Dessaro up the path. Spiral staircase. Get close to where the dolphins gather. Dessaro curious to ask what this phenomenon means? Is the dolphin's unusual behavior related to other people? Davins say, that's right, look at those dolphins mating. But now is not his time to get excited. Before the mermaids arrived, their behavior was very normal. Dessaro said thoughtfully, it was really unusual. This means that mermaids can communicate with dolphins somehow. Affects their inherent behavior. Perhaps the dolphin's language can also respond to the mermaid, so that he can understand. Davins, do you remember the research we did involving dolphin language translation? Davins took out a small box and said. Of course, the dolphin sounds we learned at that time were all in this box. Through comparing the sounds of mermaids, I found a similarity. Dessaro asked with bright eyes. Which paragraph? Davins twisted the box and told me to adjust it a bit. Meanwhile, Dessaro looked for the silhouette of the mermaid. In the water not far away, there was an extremely familiar, slender figure lurking. It seems to be swaying and swimming towards this direction. And all the surrounding sea creatures immediately scattered to both sides, as if giving way to their king. The silhouette of a mermaid appeared, his platinum hair dispersing in the water. His eyes were as deep as the bottom of the ocean, his thin lips drew an evil curve, surrounded by countless dense branches of black coral, making him look like a grim reaper condensed from the night. In this instant, Dessaro felt like he was in existence like a black hole big enough to swallow the entire ocean. The strangely strong scent of the mermaid's body blew into his face. I felt my heart beat faster. Dessaro quickly covered his nose. Tell Davins he's over here, the box is to lure him. At this time, Davins also found the audio he was looking for. He put the box to Dessaro's ear and said, listen, this is the part. The number of this sound is similar to the frequency of dolphins looking for a mate. I think that's the reason why the dolphins wake up. Dessaro listened to the sounds coming from the box. And this very familiar sound was the name he called the mermaid agora. Davins continued, I guess this is probably the sound made when someone else is flirting. Dessaro suddenly widened his eyes. He turned to look at the mermaid. The mermaid was now standing straight in front of the glass door, deep eyes between the swaying strands of hair, staring at him surface. Look at the mermaid inside the glass cage staring at you. A thought suddenly popped into Dessaro's head. If Davant's guess is correct, then, he tilted his head to one side, forcing his eyes away from the merman. Seriously looked at Davant's, coughed. What he meant was that the mermaid might be in heat. Davant seriously nodded. Very potential. Recall the mermaid's previous actions on the boat. Dessaro realized that his actions towards him were in heat. Yet you foolishly mistook this syllable for his name. Right now he really just wanted to quickly apparate away. Agara, this series of sounds suddenly appeared not from the recorder but from the mermaid's mouth. The sound was like a penetrating electric wave, passing through the cabin glass, making Dessaro's whole body numb, unable to restrain himself from turning around to see. The mermaid raised his hand to touch his chest, his hand slowly sliding down his body, as if showing off her toned body with attractive six-pack abs. Express your attraction to your mating partner. His eyes looked at Dessaro with infatuated eyes. Looking at the expression of the fish in front of him, Dessaro wanted to blow his head, trying to calm himself down. He's just a fish looking for the wrong partner. He took a deep breath and decided to try to communicate a little more deeply with the fish guy. Reshape his thoughts and find a deviant for him. Dessaro is preparing his head never heard before. Ovando. If I heard correctly. This sentence sounds like opening a door. Dessaro turned his head suspiciously. Saw Davant's passing by with a confused face. Suddenly he saw the mermaid's eyes directed at Davant's behind him. Opening his mouth, a string of syllables came out. The state of being like a lost soul. Slowly approached the control panel in front of the cage. Like a robot being ordered to raise its hand and press down on the lever on the control panel. That lever is the emergency door opening lever. Immediately the water in the prison chamber rushed out. Davant's was knocked unconscious by the water, and the mermaid also followed the water to escape. Realizing the unstable situation, Dessaro quickly turned around and ran away. I secretly think this is also the ability of mermaids. Yet it is possible to control human consciousness. Before he could take a few steps, a mermaid's hand reached out and grabbed his ankle. Dessaro staggered and fell to the ground. Catching Dessaro, the fishman smiled triumphantly. The mouth calls his name. The intermittent sound is not clear. His whole body emitted a strange scent. The scent rushed into his sinuses, making Dessaro suddenly feel hot. Limbs are limp. He realized that this young, strong male mermaid was in love with him. He wants to mate with me. The mermaid lowered his body with two arms, one left and one right, imprisoning Dessaro under his body. Dessaro panicked and reached out his arm to stop him. Try to reason with him. Look, Agara, you're wrong. I am not. I'm so tired to live. Why did I say this syllable out loud? Isn't this a response to his flirting? I'm a stupid guy. Sure enough, hearing his words, the mermaid's expression became even more excited. He even stretched out his bright red tongue, lowered his head, licked his neck and nibbled. Dessaro used force to push him away, but the opponent did not budge. On the contrary, it slowly moves towards the mouth. The tip of his tongue forcibly opened his mouth and forcefully entered. The thick wet fish tail under his body also used all his strength to squeeze between his legs, bending them into an arc, stuffing the gap between her legs. The mermaid stared at Dessaro with an enchanting smile and spoke in a broken voice. Agara Dessaro. His long, scattered hair carried a musk scent that spread everywhere in the air. The scent is like a flood flooding the senses. Carry each wave of stimulation that burns the body. Dessaro's face turned red and he groaned. His whole body was completely numb and he no longer had any self-control. You can just let the mermaid do whatever he wants. What else do you do without needing to say it so everyone knows? Right at the most climactic moment, a gunshot suddenly erupted. Next was the sharp sound of the bullet hitting glass. Along with the loud scream calling Dessaro's name, Dessaro was stunned. My nerves completely collapsed. He could only tilt his head and look towards the source of the sound. He saw a familiar figure quickly running towards him, Professor Rhine. A buzzing sound rang out in his head as his consciousness sank into darkness. Dessaro, you really want to study mermaids? Even if it may cost you your life? Yes, please tell me about the mermaid situation at the time of the accident at sea. The nightmare that night was truly a nightmare. I hid in the cabin. Seeing my companions with my own eyes being treated as food by mermaids broke their necks. Without hesitation, I was scared. The old woman sighed and closed her eyes. It's like sinking into painful memories. I held my head and said I was still watching that guy take my son away. It doesn't come back anymore. I regret, truly regret. The old woman's eye sockets suddenly tensed up as if about to burst. The dry hand grabbed my shirt tightly, revealing a strange and crazy smile. Believe me if you are at sea and want to meet a mermaid. They will feel it. They like handsome, fragrant young men like my son. You too. Dessaro knew she was immersed in memories of her years at sea. I think what she said is still subjective and not trustworthy. But at that moment, suddenly, a hand gently patted his shoulder. Dessaro turned around. His eyes widened in surprise. Behind him was a man with a swollen blue and white face. His whole body was covered with seaweed, his eye sockets were as deep as two dark caves. He died a long time ago, died at sea. He told Dessaro to believe her, you will meet the mermaid. Dessaro took a step back in fear. Feeling a bit strange under my feet again. He bent down to look below and was surprised. From his waist down, he was covered in scales. Transforms into a long, sparkling silver-gray fishtail. Wrapped around countless strings of pearls. The scene was extremely beautiful. But for a person like Dessaro, this is a nightmare. He screamed loudly and woke up from his dream. Cold sweat flowed all over his body. Hastily shocked, he looked down. Luckily the leg was still intact. He moved his body to get out of bed, but his body suddenly felt pain. What's going on? From the waist down, I'm tired and weak. It's like being beaten by someone. Aren't we in the underground water storage researching mermaids with Davins? Why are you lying in bed? That's right, he let the mermaid out. What then? What happened then? Don't remember clearly that the mermaid was playing a trick? At this moment, with a roar, the door opened wide. Old Professor Rhine walked in boldly. Roughly grabbed Dessaro's collar and lifted him up. Dessaro didn't understand what was going on. Ask him, why do you have a stomach ache after eating badly? That expression looks like you're constipated? He fiercely looked at Dessaro with an unwilling expression as if he wished he could swallow him into his stomach. He threw him on the bed and shouted. I warned you not to approach that mermaid. He considered my words like wind blowing in his ears. The already injured butt hit the stiff bedboard. The pain was so much that Dessaro wanted to curl up. When not bitten by a dog. Dessaro scolded angrily. What are you crazy about? The old professor squeezed his chin, forcing him to raise his head to face him. Dessaro told me you didn't do it voluntarily, you just lost your memory temporarily, right? His words made him suddenly realize that he had temporary amnesia, his memory was indeed interrupted. Maybe Rhine knows something. Dessaro pushed the professor away and said, yes, you know what I forgot, right? My injury was also suffered at that time. The old professor looked closely at Dessaro, his eyes suddenly stopped. Dessaro looked at him with a puzzled face, waiting for an answer. The shirt he was wearing, which was already loose, was pulled even more lower, revealing his white chest, which still had a few red kiss marks on it. Although it wasn't intentional, the scene is extremely captivating. Attention was placed on sensitive places on Dessaro's body. Rhine's face turned pink. Breathing is a bit rapid. Dessaro looked at his expression and eyes. I got goosebumps and quickly reached out to pull my shirt back. Frowning, he called out his name loudly. Ryan's throat moved slightly, he swallowed a mouthful of saliva, breathed a sigh of relief, and reacted as if he had just finished taking opium. Turn around and plug the USB into the computer and say, "The camera turns around so you can see for yourself." Dessaro sat in front of the computer, not knowing why, but felt like he would see something extremely scary. It was like a voice in my head was screaming desperately. "No, don't watch it, I'll regret it," make he hesitate a bit. But the vague memories at that time made Dessaro even more intensely curious, struggling in conflict for a long time. In the end, he decided to watch the recording at that time. Just as I was about to click on the video to play it, there was a knock on the door from outside. Dessaro hastily closed the computer. Ryan quickly pulled out the USB and put it away. A step into the room. Leading the way is a young woman. Wear a white researcher's coat. Following behind were several tall male soldiers. Professor Ryan called her Colonel Saran, wondered why she was here when he was interrupted. "Please call me doctor here." She walked over to shake Dessaro's hand and introduced Saran, director of the St. Petersburg Institute of Mystical Biology, and lieutenant colonel of the 7th Russian Navy. "You must be Wallace. Nice to meet you." "Hello, I'm Dessaro, a fourth-year biology student at Blue Marine Academy. I want to know if you can really interact with mermaids? If so, I hope you can help. Help us breed the mermaids." Dessaro was surprised. "During the breeding, could it be that you caught a female mermaid?" Saran shook his head. The asexual type probably exists for about a year. As of today, only less than a week. Dessaro was excited, unable to hide his desire to research, instinctively replied, "I agreed, being able to witness with my own eyes and assist in completing the breeding of mermaids, it was great. Meaningful, this can also correct Agara's tendency to choose the wrong partner so that his attention is away from himself. When this thought appears in his mind, an agitation is unlikely." The words suddenly overflowed from Dessaro's lower body. He felt the muscle on his buttocks as if something was wrapped around it and tightened tightly. Her cheeks became hot, a thin layer of sweat seeped on her forehead, and even hallucinations arose. I heard the deep, enchanting voice of the mermaid Agara from my hand. "Dessaro." Ryan called his name. Heard someone calling his name. Dessaro woke up from this spell-like state. Finding himself leaning on Ryan's elbow, Saran kindly asked, "How are you? If your face is very red, does it mean you have a fever?" Ryan clenched Dessaro's hand and said in a low, serious voice, "Colonel Saran, as his instructor, I strongly oppose Dessaro with his current health condition to help breed mermaids." Dessaro was determined. "No, I don't want to miss this opportunity. Let me go." Ryan raised his voice to stop him, but it didn't work. The colonel agreed with Dessaro and he hid behind Saran, provocatively raising his middle finger at Ryan. This colonel is the professor's superior, he cannot disobey orders, he can only hold his anger in his heart. "Go into the undersea laboratory again." Dessaro, feeling this strange smell is getting stronger and stronger, making people dizzy. Stepping up the stairs, walking to the front of the glass cell, discovered that Agara was not here. He just breathed a sigh of relief. "I'm a bit afraid of meeting him. Or should I say that he now seems like he can't treat mermaids like normal animals." Saran said, "Look Dessaro, this is our masterpiece." A cylindrical black column in the center of the laboratory was slowly descending, revealing a transparent glass shell inside. Behind the glass layer, silver hair can be seen scattered in the water. Blue eyes like emeralds. Her beautiful silhouette slowly appeared. She had white hair like Agara's that swayed in the waves like a patch of pure snow. Her originally white skin emitted a layer of transparent mist. The fish's tail is long and slender, with a layer of iridescent red-pink fabric and a pair of emerald eyes filled with mist. It felt like she was crying. She stands out in the beautiful deep blue water like a naked fairy. Saran introduction. Her name is Lilith, she is artificial. From mermaid cells that were frozen for a long time 20 years ago, so she looked very weak, looking at the mermaid in the water tank. Dessaro felt it. Her expression looked very sad. It made his mood a bit down. He rested his hand on the glass. Use comforting mouth shapes. Sorry, don't be afraid, soon you will be able to be with your kind. Is that okay? You know, research and nurturing are two things. We have no right to control their destiny. Dessaro turned to ask if we were really appropriate to do so? Assuming the female mermaid successfully becomes pregnant, can we guarantee the embryo survives and matures? The mermaid nourishes its skin after it becomes an adult, and in which water body should we release it? To Dessaro's questions, Saran calmly replied. Sorry, we don't have such far-fetched plans, nor do we intend to release the mermaids. Saran went to the console and pulled the lever to open the emergency door. Dessaro wanted to stop it but couldn't do it in time. The moment the lever drops, the mermaid also followed the water and fell into the cell below. A feeling of insecurity arose in Dessaro's heart. Quickly ran downstairs. Dessaro raised his hand to the glass. Watching Lilith's every move, silently calling out to Agara, "Where are you? Your mate's kind has already appeared." Amidst the thick fog in the deep blue sea, it was as if Agara was heard calling to appear. Dessaro nervously watched their actions. Lilith seemed to be enthusiastic about Agara. She gently swam around Agara as if she were dancing, but the impatient Agara was extremely calm beyond everyone's expectations. He still held out his arms a bit arrogantly, as if waiting for Lilith to take the initiative to embrace him. It's like an emperor has countless concubines. Normally, males, in order to catch the eye of females, will actively express themselves. Yet he was indifferent. Immediately after that, Lilith swooped into Agara's arms. Agara also hugged Lilith tightly and lowered his head to her neck to smell her scent. It seemed like they were getting acquainted. But his eyes hid a cold, murderous aura that carried an indescribable meaning. But no one at the scene recognized this strange look. Dessaro felt more and more urgent. His whole body was almost sticking to the glass floor, looking at the two figures in his embrace. I feel a little relieved, yes, very good, that's it. But soon he witnessed a terrifying scene. He was so scared that he fell down and sat on the ground. Saran stood behind him and shouted in panic. He actually bit off Lilith's neck in the glass cage at this time, only seeing a large patch of purple-red blood gradually diffuse from Lilith's body. At the same time carrying away the pieces of flesh, her long colored hair floated. Attached to the head was once as beautiful as a flower and the throat was full of blood. Slowly float to the surface of the water. Her beautiful emerald eyes looked desperately at the outside world as if asking for help. Like crying, like mourning. But Agara was hugging that headless body. Like a real shark. Brutally biting and tearing Lilith's flesh. Inside the dark pupils flashed with hunger and thirst like a wild beast. His face was now engulfed in a thick patch of blood, looking fierce like a devil. He is a fierce and scary beast. I really shouldn't be seduced by his appearance. Dessaro was furious and frantically banged on the glass door and screamed. Agara, stop for me. Those are your kind. Your kind. Agara seemed to hear Dessaro's screams and stopped biting and swallowing. Turn your head to look towards him. The brutality instantly dissipated. Instead, there is a completely different kind of aura. The thin lips, still streaked with blood, curled up as if they weren't there. His eyes stared at Dessaro without leaving. Licking all the blood and flesh on my lips. Let go of Lilith's body. Hastily swam towards him. Fast as an arrow leaving the bow. The tall, slender body instantly covered Dessaro's face, close to his face. The mouth shows a gentle smile. His eyes were as deep as looking at a lover. His hand placed on the glass matched your hand placed on the glass. If there is no separating glass panel. The pale hand in the water was already tightly intertwined with his. This action made Dessaro horrified. Take a step back. Suddenly crashed into the person behind. He immediately turned his head back. Immediately I saw Saran using an extremely unusual look to evaluate me. Ryan's face behind him turned pale again. What, did you name the mermaid Agara? Yet it can be heard and understood. Moreover, he responded to you. How could you do that? Saran opened her eyes wide in surprise behind her gold-rimmed glasses. Dessaro realized that he had made the mistake of calling the wrong name again, and quickly waved his hand. No, you're wrong, doctor, that's just his other name, besides Davins discussed it with me. The meaning of that word is very possible, very likely. At this point, Dessaro hesitated, making Saran wait even more eagerly for an answer. What could it be? It is an expression that means I am your friend. A signal with special meaning in the mermaid race. What does it mean specifically? Still need to observe more to know. Dessaro looked away a little embarrassed. Decided to hide the true meaning. Is that a mermaid sign of find the mate or something? How can you say it? Lilith is the clone that we work hard to nurture. I didn't expect it to be cancelled like that. Why did this male mermaid suddenly go crazy? Yet consider her as food. Dessaro, we need you as long as you can talk to the mermaid. I solemnly request you to specialize in mermaid research. This achievement is very important for the Russian government. Dessaro was surprised. What you mean is for me to work for the government. If you refuse, you may miss a great opportunity to study mermaids. Therefore, Dessaro did not hesitate and agreed to accept. Suddenly Ryan stepped forward to block the doctor who was his supervisor. I should guide him through the entire process of completing the research project, he has no experience. Nor are they from the research institute. Saran meaningfully glanced at him, gently turned around, her hand silently placed on the pen in her pocket. What I mean is that Dessaro needs to complete the research alone. Ryan, you should trust your students. Having completed your research alone, do you understand how scary mermaids are? I am absolutely responsible for the safety of my students. Saran's finger gently touched the tip of the pen on his pocket. Right after that, Ryan's expression suddenly changed again, as if he saw something extremely scary. Then, as if he had been electrocuted, he cringed a bit, his whole body fell to the ground. Saran cried out, Ryan, oh my God, he fainted, someone quickly take him to the hospital. As ordered, several black-shirt guards immediately stepped in to shield people. Dessaro felt a bit strange. As he was about to follow behind, he was stopped by Saran. Nothing. No need to worry that he has epilepsy, emotional excitement will easily cause illness. The laboratory above is the best hospital in Ireland and he will be treated promptly. The observation room will be ready very quickly. Come in tonight. Okay. Night falls in the biological base observation room. Dessaro lay on the bed tossing and turning. The whole body feels hot like a fever. The uncomfortable body curled up unconsciously. A strange noise echoed in my ears. It was the sound of running water mixed with a series of syllables he had heard before. Agara Dessaro. Dessaro woke up. Cold sweats suddenly broke out and soaked the entire hem of his shirt. This is the sound of a mermaid, the mermaid is running away, there is no way there is high-tech protective equipment in here. Dessaro looked to the side and saw the computer open on the table. I couldn't help but let out a gentle breath, touching his sweaty forehead. It turns out I forgot my computer. Suddenly Dessaro felt his whole body gradually heat up. At the same time, a strange itch ran up from my spine. It's like a bunch of ants crawling all over my body. What's going on? Is it because of that call? Indeed, mermaids have mystical powers. Dessaro got out of bed and wanted to turn off the sound. But my legs suddenly had no strength, falling directly from the bed onto the glass floor. Dessaro didn't understand why his body had this kind of reaction. He tried to use all his strength to move. Go to the computer that keeps making that sound. His legs trembled slightly. The muscles in the buttocks are stimulated to the point of contracting intermittently. A feeling of emptiness arose deep within my body, making it difficult to open my mouth. Dessaro's face turned red and he was on the glass floor. Secretly thinking to myself, I must have encountered a ghost. I have to quickly turn it off. Finally, after a period of struggling with the strange phenomenon. Dessaro also successfully turned off the computer and sat down on the floor, panting. In such a short time, I sweated so much. It's like you just exercised vigorously. So when people have sex, do they sweat so much? Somewhat images flashed in his mind involuntarily. What am I thinking about? Dessaro smacked himself a few times, stopping himself from thinking anymore. Suddenly his eyes hit something. Behind the transparent glass below him, a long dark shadow, hiding among a large seaweed sound. Countless small fish surrounded them in a circle, clinging to the glass floor. The mermaid with long, narrow eyes emitting a faint fluorescent light was, in the water below, staring at him. Show a lewd smile. Seeing the crazy scene, Dessaro couldn't help but get angry, his face turned red. Yet he is now considering me as his sexual object? It's so wild. Dessaro stood up, stomped his feet on the glass floor and cursed, "Agara, my animal. Don't follow me." But the mermaid didn't have the slightest thought of leaving. He was glued to the glass, looking intently at Dessaro without taking his eyes off. Dessaro decisively turned towards the mermaid and took off his shirt. Throw it aside, squat down on the glass screen, clench your hands into fists, thumbs pointing at yourself, chanting every word, "You see clearly, I'm a man, pure, not a sissy, a grown man. Become healthy. You and I have exactly the same thing, we're not the object of your flirting. I wonder if I understand what you're saying?" But the fish guy was not only not surprised. His demeanor seemed even more excited. It was like his body was filled with the fatal lure in his eyes. I really want to die. Could it be that this mermaid is gay? Suddenly the mermaid glanced at something with a serious face. Relax your hand pressing on the glass floor. Flip your tail and swim downwards. In Dessaro's surprise before completely disappearing in the murky water. She turned her head and glanced at him deeply. At this moment, the intercom on the wall made a hesitant sound. Saran's voice rang out. "Hello, Mr. Dessaro. Are you awake?" Dessaro pressed the button on the radio in response. "I'm, Doctor." Receiving the answer, the other end of the line told him, "A storm is coming, I and the others must temporarily retreat to the mainland, you must stay in the laboratory alone for a few days, no need to worry about the room. The experiment was sturdy enough food and water, no problems. We will try to quickly return to your side." "Okay, I understand, if there are any problems, please contact me." In the middle of speaking, the signal flickered and the connection was lost. There was also a crackling sound on the other end of the line. Dessaro tried to contact again but couldn't get through, so he hung up. "I don't understand why I feel so uneasy." Turning around to look towards the cabin door, he discovered a bunch of wet seaweed underneath. A long trail of water takes it as the end point. The air smelled faintly of familiar musk. Dessaro retreated in horror. And something, a huge shadow like a python, was covering the back at some unknown moment. Dessaro slowly turned his head, extremely surprised. "I don't know when he came here with the mermaid stuck on the back of his head." "Breathe in your scent deeply." Raising her voice in a low voice, Agara said a series of familiar languages. Dessaro grabbed the gun, turned around, and pointed the gun at him. Crying inside without tears. "Why is there an incident now? The mermaid is not only not afraid." Moving closer, Dessaro pulled the trigger, but the gun had no bullets. In panic, he threw the gun at him. The mermaid gently caught the gun. Holding the gun in his hand, he easily bent it without wasting any effort. He also flashed a proud and provocative smile. "Speak up and say a long sentence." The sound is intermittent but completely understandable. Surprised and giving me goosebumps, he was saying, "Can this thing hurt me?" Yet he knows how to use human language to provoke. Dessaro quickly grabbed the shirt and put it on. "Tell yourself you have to leave this place first." But before he could take a few steps, the mermaid's hand grabbed his ankle and pulled him back, causing him to lose his balance and fall on the glass floor. "Let me go, you damn beast." Dessaro kicked around frantically, wanting to escape the mermaid's restraints. His two claws tightly grabbed the boy's legs and dragged them towards his body. The tough fishtail separated his closed legs, creating a gap between them. Agura pressed Dessaro under him, grabbed his collar and turned him over. Dessaro's lower body was restrained by the tail and had no way to escape. All I can do is scream and get out, hoping you will understand and let me go. But it's all just your illusion. Not only did he not let go, he also tore the clothes underneath his body. Dessaro said excitedly. Dessaro shouted angrily. My body is similar to yours, don't look at me with this kind of eyes, you animal. Get out. The fish guy was very interested in enjoying his private area. Excited pupils lit up. His head looked like he was nibbling on delicious food, licking the sensitive spot on Dessaro's lower body. Lower body is violated. Dessaro's body suddenly trembled. His face was red as if it was burning, his hands clenched into fists to cover his mouth. The mermaid suddenly turned him over. Big hands held his waist. The other hand places the name on the back and presses down. Realize his intentions. In an instant, the feeling of shame and fear flared to the extreme. Dessaro risked his life and shouted for help. The mermaid leaned into his ear and spoke words full of love. The wet, sticky breath floated up my neck. The lower body is suddenly hit by a hard object. The intense stimulation transmitted from his lower body made Dessaro's eyes widen. Even calling for help did not have the strength to scream. Helplessly collapsed on the glass floor. I was bullied by an animal. No one can save me. No one. One of Dessaro's legs was wrapped around Agura's fishtail.